All right, today we're diving into a Supreme Court case that's way more than just some boring legal headline. We're talking about a massive clash over power, a whole lot of money, and really the future of American trade policy itself.
Okay, let's start with a big number. $487 million. Just let that sink in. That's how much U.S. importers could get back in refunds, and that's just for tariffs on goods from India. But believe me, as you're about to see, that's only the very, very tip of the iceberg.
So you've got to be asking, right? How in the world did we get here? How does a trade dispute blow up into this massive legal showdown with so much cash on the line? Well, the answer? It takes us right into the heart of Washington's power struggles. Remember that $487 million for India? Yeah, turns out that's just a drop in the bucket. We are talking about potential refunds that could climb into the hundreds of billions of dollars. This affects trade with over 100 different countries. So no, this is not just some legal case, it is a full-on global economic showdown.
So what's at the heart of all this? Well, this legal battle is basically challenging the entire foundation of the Trump administration's sweeping tariffs. The big question for the Supreme Court is pretty simple. Were these tariffs even legal to begin with? And this goes way beyond just economics. What we're really looking at here is a full-blown constitutional showdown. Yeah, this is a fundamental fight over the separation of powers in the U.S. government.
It really boils down to a classic Washington tug-of-war. On one side, you have the president claiming the authority to act during a national emergency. And on the other side, you have defenders of Congress saying, whoa, hold on a second. Tariffs are basically taxes, and the Constitution is crystal clear that only Congress has the power to tax.
So what was the administration's legal justification for all this? Well, they pointed to a law called the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA for short. Now, this act was originally intended for, genuine national crises. But in this case, it was used to declare national emergencies for things like trade deficits and even fentanyl trafficking.
But, as you can imagine, the businesses actually paying these tariffs see things a little differently. For them, a tariff is, for all intents and purposes, a tax on them and ultimately a tax on their customers. And they argue that using an emergency act to slap on a tax, that's a huge overreach of presidential power.
And it looks like the courts are really listening. In fact, lower courts have already ruled that using IEEPA this way was unlawful. And get this, even Supreme Court justices have reportedly shown some serious skepticism about the administration's whole line of argument.
But here's the twist. Don't for a second think that a loss at the Supreme Court means this is all over. Oh no. The administration has been very, very clear that they have a plan B ready to go, one that keeps the tariff pressure on no matter what the court decides.
And you don't have to take my word for it. Just listen to this direct quote from Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. We have lots of other authorities. I mean, that says it all, right? They believe they have other legal ways to get this done.
So what exactly are these other authorities they're talking about? Well, it pretty much comes down to two other more established trade laws. These are the tools they could use to bring back the tariffs even if the whole IEEPA argument gets thrown out by the court. Let's break them down.
Okay, first up you've got Section 232. This one lets the government put tariffs on specific products if, and this is the key part, an investigation finds that importing them is a threat to national security. It's definitely more targeted, it has a whole formal process, but believe me, it is still a very powerful tool.
Then there's the second option, Section 301. Now this one is aimed squarely at punishing other countries for what are seen as unfair trade practices, things like intellectual property theft. You've probably heard about this one because it's already been used a lot against China. And the thinking is, it could easily be expanded.
Okay, so let's step back. What does all of this really mean for the future? Well, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if it's through IEEPA, Section 232, or Section 301. What's clear is that we are looking at a brand new reality for global trade.
And here's the most crucial point to understand, regardless of which legal path they take. This policy of using aggressive tariffs as a main tool, well, it's not going away. And that creates this long-term uncertainty for the entire global economy. We're talking about effects on everything from international diplomacy all the way down to the supply chains that put products on the shelves in our local stores.
All right, so let's just quickly recap the three biggest takeaways here. First, this case is huge because it could literally redefine the limits of presidential power for generations. Second, it's a clear signal of a more aggressive, more confrontational U.S. trade policy. And third, All this uncertainty is absolutely going to keep shaking up global supply chains.
And all of this brings us right back to that fundamental question. If you strip away all the money and the politics, what you're left with is a core constitutional debate. Who should really be in the driver's seat for American trade policy? The president or Congress? The Supreme Court's answer, whatever it is going to send ripples across the entire globe.